As discussed in Part 1, we looked at the importance of the reference 81950 Chronomat in saving the Breitling Watch Company. Now, we will examine this Frecce Tricolori and try to understand the so-called AOPA models, or prototypes of the period. Breitling used the term prototype for the earliest version of the chronomat. The prototypes are often referred to as the AOPA model. This is shorthand, as it's not actually an AOPA Breitling. Instead of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association logo, there is a wings logo with the Breitling B at its centre. All up, around 500 prototypes were made with 9 dial variations. After the launch of the prototypes, there was a slight dial change, but the reference 81950 remained. So what makes a prototype? Turns out it's mostly in the dial. Here is a standard 81950 dial, of which many thousands were sold during the 80s. And here is a prototype dial. So these are the differences. The prototype has 2 dots at 12. Standard production did not. Prototypes have thick markers at 12, 6 and 9. Standard production had thinner markers. Prototypes have the B-wing logo in the centre and Breitling at 3. Standard production has Breitling and wings at 3. Early production has Swiss made astride the bottom subdial, and standard production has it within the subdial. The watch that started it all, the earliest model of the prototypes, was the Frecce Tricolori, and it's slightly different again, with the tricolour emblem at 3, Breitling above the lowest subdial, and Swiss made astride the subdial, but sometimes it's within. The earliest known catalogue from 1984 show the early dials, but already by 1985 the standard dials had appeared, as you can see from this catalogue page from that year. Funnily, the instruction manual that went out with the standard production over the rest of the decade always showed prototype features on the dial cover. So back to the watch in hand. This watch has some unusual features, and the first is on the back with 2 dedications. You'll notice an inscription at the centre of the watch for the Milano Railways. I presume this is a later 2nd edition. However, there is an earlier dedication. Exclusive series, especially made for the 313 Group Pan No. 1. Now, the 313 group is the actual Frecce Tricolori flying team. So could this be one of the watches that was actually supplied to them? I spent many hours scrolling through old images of Frecce Tricolori pilots. However, to date, I could only find several poor quality images. Considering its importance, surely Breitling would have this watch on record and may be able to confirm the dedication. I reached out to Breitling to see if they had any information, but unfortunately I had a disappointing reply. When the company headquarters moved, not all archives were retrieved. The information you wish is therefore not available anymore. What a shame there is now a gap in Breitling's history. Undaunted, I kept searching and was able to find 6 more early Frecce Tricolori with the same inscription on the back, and I'm sure more will be uncovered as time goes by. There is a second puzzle with this watch. You will notice it does not have the standard 8 screws around the bezel. The screws and rider tabs are an iconic feature of the chronomat, a design created by Schneider himself. My first thought was I had the wrong bezel, but after careful comparison, I can confirm it is the correct bezel for this watch, except for the missing screws. I even found another watch with the same 4 rider tabs and no screws. I reached out to an enthusiast collector versed in the 81950 Chronomat, and he explained that the watch was made at the height of the quartz crisis, a crazy time for Breitling. The company had just been sold and was losing money. The factory ran flat out to meet demand and keep up with supply. And one possible explanation is that a few of these bezels missed getting the 8 screws attached, and it was subsequently overlooked by quality control. It's a shame that much of the history of Breitling was lost during the wild days of the quartz crisis, especially for the reference 81950 Frecce that proved a pivotal watch for the brand. It shows us that for all the collecting forums and websites, there is still information from this period to be discovered about this storied brand and the reference 81950 Chronomat.